Hi everyone, my name is Kim and I'm here with Zsuzsi, Taras, Shira, and Lee. We are five friends, speakers, and professionals from different cultures, backgrounds, and age groups, coming together to offer you healing and inspiration. We are continuing a conversation with Zsuzsi here about her journey and how it's caused her to completely reevaluate and reframe what success means to her. Taras, I know you were dying to ask Zsuzsi a question.
Dying. So, Zsuzsi, I know I was sitting there, I was listening to you, and I started to feel what you were saying. I started to feel your pain because, we all go through very similar things in life. And all I wanted to do was ask you, when your partner came up to you and was like, we're done, this business deal, it's done, we have to close the doors. I know you fought through and you kept on working and you went hard at it. You wanted to keep the doors open, but what happened at the end of the day? Did you go home and cry? Were you able to sleep at night? Were you up all hours of the night? What happened?
Well, at first it was a sense of renewal, right? I got this bad energy, this negative energy out of my space, and so I was able to be reinvigorated with everything, and we got some more investment money, and I was like, all right, this is it. This is what's going to be the thing that makes me successful. And still the business wasn't growing at the rate that it needed to. And so answer your question about, how I felt at night, I was drunk.
Oh,
The time I was drunk. The salon served wine to the guests. It's something that you can do without a liquor license. You can give people a glass of wine, and then we made friends with the bartender down the street. So we were constantly drinking during work, after work. It got to a point where 2 p.m. was around the time that the wine got open. And this was all because I really couldn't cope with the stress of what was happening. I was so scared of looking bad in front of the world. And I was so scared that I was going to be revealed as a fraud, that at first it was just the wine, and then I actually did start having little breakdowns at home, and not being able to sleep, and I would wake up at probably 4 o'clock in the morning every morning, with my heart pounding and sweating, and my mind was screaming at me, you're failing, you're failing, you're failing. How could you let this happen? This is all your fault. Everybody was counting on you. And I went to go see a psychiatrist because, I had friends who took Xanax, and I figured it couldn't hurt, right?
so you were numbing your pain.
Oh, I numbed it in every way that I possibly could. I mean, I thought I was going to go in for some Xanax, and then I was prescribed sleep aids and mood stabilizers and
Oh my God.
Xanax that I could take 3 times a day if I wanted to. And,
And you were
it
still drinking on all of that.
all of it. Yep.
So wait, did you take the stuff? Did you take these things?
I took the other stuff very irregularly, but Xanax was a 3 time a day. If the voice in my head ever got too loud, I was like, oh, my little helper, it was like Valley of the Dolls or something. And I joke around about that, but to be honest with you, I knew in my heart that I wasn't supposed to be on this medication. I knew in my heart that I didn't have an imbalance in my brain, which is what these medications are made for. I just knew that it was a crutch, and I felt even more ashamed of the fact that it was a crutch, but I still made jokes about it all the time, which was again, to sort of cover up the fact that I was in so much pain. And I think one of the things that, looking back on it, broke my heart the most was that I just really stopped communicating with my family. Like, my mom would be really worried about me, and I wouldn't call her for months at a time. I mean, I call her every day normally.
Well, Zsuzsi, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you were married. So like, what was your husband trying to be supportive during this time? Were you waking him up in the middle of the night, crying to him? Like, how was that relationship during all of this?
So he was definitely trying to be comforting to me. You know, it was really stressing him out that he became the sole breadwinner of our household. You know, I wasn't really paying myself from the business. And that was something that really made me very bitter about working so hard, because I'd never worked harder in my life and earned less money. So it was really difficult on that level. And then, you know, it was just one thing after another. He ended up losing his job, then he ended up getting another job, and then amidst all of this, his father passed away suddenly. And so it just, I mean, it completely tore us apart. You know, we like barely said two words to each other. I left early in the morning. I came home late at night. We were like ships passing in the night. There were days at a time when we wouldn't actually speak to each other. And that's not a foundation for a healthy relationship at all. But also, I just don't feel like I even wanted to admit to him. You know, you get into a relationship with somebody, and you think that it's always going to be sunshine and roses, like when we first got together, and then you hit this really, really tough bump in the road, and that's when you find out what your relationship is really made of.
So, Zsuzsi, I have a quick question for you. So at this point, now that that business was behind you and caused all this stress and stuff like that, could you identify better today what it was that caused all that stress or tension that you were going through? Was it different than what you went through at that time when you heard, we don't have any money, we're closing up the shop?
Well, up until that point, I was in it with my first business partner. We were equal shareholders in the business. And then when she left, I inherited her 50%, which sounds like a good thing, but what all that it really meant on paper was that now I'm solely responsible for the
So
business.
were you in a bigger debt, in deeper debt?
Yes.
And that was a lot probably.
The debt was all mine. So she, was bringing her expertise and sweat equity to the business, and I was bringing the marketing and the money. And so, I actually don't think that I was honest with anybody about how much money I owed, because again, it looks bad. It felt super daunting, like daunting beyond anything that I could ever even describe. Like, how do you look at what is in your bank account and then how much you owe, and like how long it's going to take you to pay that back, and not just like have a full-on panic attack.
Zsuzsi, I so relate.
And I do too. I do too.
And I do too.
T, you were gonna say something, T. Taris, you were gonna say something?
Yeah, I don't remember because the conversation is so amazing and it's going all over the place. But
My mind is blown. Go ahead.
yeah, I mean, what I was actually wondering a while ago, you had mentioned something about the energies were bad when when you had gone home. With the first partner, was the energy actually bad with the partner, or is it within yourself? Like, did you have to get out of like a bad vibe that was in the salon?
Actually, I've thought about that a lot because, you know, my awareness at the time, like, again, I was pouring alcohol all over my problems. I was numbing myself with all sorts of pills. So I don't feel like that level of awareness was there at all. I just remember when my first business partner left, a, a regular client walked in and basically just said, the energy is different in here. The energy has shifted. And I was like, oh, great. Well, that
Like,
takes care of that then. You know,
like in a good way or in a bad way?
like in a good way.
Do you
Like,
think she was really stressed with everything that was going on and she just wanted out?
she was very stressed out about, you know, uh, I think probably the same way that I was, that like we made this huge fuss and we got all of these people to pay attention to what we were doing, and then it wasn't working the way that we thought it was going to. And so I think that in that time she was like, wow, this is a lot of hard work and I don't see a way forward. And so yeah, her attitude started to shift from this rah we can do it to very, I look back at it as she was more the realist than me. But yeah, her attitude definitely had a huge effect on me and the energy that was happening. And I mean, I saged that place like I've never saged any place before after she left. But I think that the energy when it was back up, when I was reinvigorated after she left, that only lasted so long. You know, there's an energy that I knew that I brought to the space, and by, I mean, 2.5 years we stayed open after that, you know, so we were open for a total of 3.5 years, and she was only the first 8 months of it. After that was just like hustle, network, every like business conference, every, you know, opportunity. I responded to every email within like an hour of receiving it. There was no room for error as far as I was concerned, and I was going to grab every single opportunity. But one of the things that I try to teach people now who are in business is that you are not your business. Your business is an independent entity from you. And when somebody rejects your business, they're not rejecting you. They do not see the opportunity to work with your business in the way that makes sense for them. That is not a reflection on you. It is not who you are. You cannot tie yourself to the worth of your business, or no matter how successful it is financially, you're not going to feel successful. You are your own person. Your business is an entity. You created it, true, but you cannot, there has to be a balance.
Kim, did you want to say something?
Actually, Shira, you go first and I'll go after you.
No, I just had a question about like the work that you did on yourself. Like when did the awareness start to shift where you were like having these epiphanies, and like did it take for it to completely disintegrate for you to kind of rise from the ashes? Like take us through that pivotal time.
So I did have somebody that I was doing business with, this guy who developed an app for salons, which was brilliant. And he called me up one night. It was Friday night. It was around Christmas time. I had been at work for 14 hours. It was like late at night, and I'm like at my computer still plugging away with my glass of wine. And he was like, hey, you know, I just did this seminar and I think that it would really help you in your business. If you could ask for one thing, what would you want? And I said, work-life balance. I mean, I would have asked for so much more, but that was just such a like immediate, like, why am I here after 14 hours? It's so late on a Friday night drinking by myself. And he said, well, why do you think you don't have work-life balance? And I said, well, because the people that work for me aren't reliable. And he said, well, why don't you think that they're reliable? Is it because you do not know how to delegate to them? And I said, oh yeah, I know I have control issues and I don't know how to delegate to my staff, and that's why I don't trust them. And he goes, well, that's something that you know about yourself. And if that's something that you know about yourself, you know you can change that. But what if there was something that you don't know about why your business isn't doing well?
Mhm.
And I was like, go on, I'm listening. And he goes, well, I did this program and I had a lot of people in my office do it too. And I think that it would really benefit you. And I was like, what is it called? He was like, it's called Landmark. And I'm like already typing it in. I'm already putting in my credit card information. I was like, I don't know even how I'm going to pay for this, but like, I have to do this, because that just made so much sense to me, because there was something that I always felt like I couldn't figure out about why this wasn't working. Like, all of the puzzle pieces were there. So why wasn't this working out for me? You know, I was always taught from an early age that if you just work hard, things are going to work out for you. And I was just like, how much longer do I have to literally kill myself in order to get there? There was nothing that before that I felt like I couldn't solve. This was the first problem in my life I felt like I couldn't solve. So I went to Landmark, which is where I met Kim. Where's
So
that?
wait, Z, you didn't do any prior work? Nothing. Like, you didn't like go home and like meditate, or you didn't go and do like an exercise class?
Paris, there wasn't one day that Zsuzsi wasn't hysterical crying in our workshops together.
Oh, okay.
We did all the work in this program, but she did the work. Yes, the program was very helpful, but she did the work.
It's
But
like the
usually
floodgates. It's like the floodgates opened up. Like all the stuff you were suppressing was just like a geyser, right?
Yeah.
It opens up your awareness to life, to what you're doing, to how you're being. It's amazing.
I wish I was there to see it. Seriously.
I just remember, I'm sorry, I have to say this one thing. I remember I walked in the first day and I sat down. It was like the coldest day. It was January. It was snowing. And I was like dressed up because I'm at a business seminar and people are walking in like Uggs and pajamas. And I was like, this is not a business seminar. And so I'm sitting there with my little notebook, and the seminar leader said, for some of you, this is going to save your life. This is a life and death proposition. And I just like the faucet turned on, and I was like, because I knew she was right. I knew that I could not keep going the way that I was. It was not sustainable, not like as a business, but like as a human being. It was not sustainable to live in that level of stress and anxiety and self-doubt and, you know, just feeling like nothing at all was in my control, like nothing. And the funny thing is that throughout this journey, I've actually realized that we don't have control. The only thing that we have is ourselves, and to be able to trust that is the control that I'm looking for. You know, success to me was always about the end goal. So I never lived in the moment. I always dwelled in the past and what happened in the past, and I would hold on to it for dear life because it was informing everything that I was doing to move myself forward in my process. And once I started letting go of all of those things that I had started believing about myself as a result of these perceived failures, I started to really see that actually it's not that I wanted to save my business. It's that my business was no longer congruent with my values in life. And even though I had started out wanting to create a space for women to feel good about themselves, to feel valued, and a place where they could come together and share, all I did was create a salon. Like, it was a great experience for a lot of them, but it didn't change their lives. It didn't like make them better people. It eventually just became a place where they felt comfortable bitching about everything that they felt was bad in their lives. So I realized that actually nobody is satisfied, and it was heartbreaking to me to listen to all of these women who were by all measures successful, in good relationships, had great careers, had great apartments, had the means to be able to pay somebody else to do their hair and makeup for them, and yet none of them were satisfied with the way that they felt in their own bodies and in their own beings. And I was like, this is not what the original intent of any of this was. And because this no longer aligns with what I originally set out to do, I can't continue to pretend like this is my medium for expressing myself. Wow. And the day that I decided that that was no longer serving me, it felt like 5 bajillion pounds was just lifted off my shoulders. And I was in the car. I was driving down Lakeshore Drive in Chicago because I went home to visit my family, who I had barely communicated with. And I don't know what song was on the radio, but I turned it all the way up, and I'm like dancing and like singing along and like driving along because I was just so happy. Like, oh, it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks about why I left my business. I don't owe anyone any explanation other than I did it for myself. I did it for myself.
You got so far, 2.5 years after the 8-month first partner left. That's a huge accomplishment, I think. Kim, did you want to say something?
I really do, actually. I'm like bursting at the seams. So, earlier when I think it was Taris asked you how you handled this, like what other repercussions or, consequences you were experiencing, you sort of jokingly said, I was drunk. And then we all sort of giggled a little bit. And I giggled too. And then my heart just sank because I grew up with a father who was an alcoholic. He's a recovered alcoholic today, but most of my life he was drinking. And I just something clicked in my head and I was like, oh my God, she became an alcoholic. I know you're not an alcoholic. But in my mind, it just made my heart sink at the thought of that. So, you looking at your journey, you were on medication, you were drinking a lot, your marriage was falling apart, your family life was falling apart. Like you were probably so sick inside from all of the stress and anxiety, the lack of sleep. Like it makes me tear up just thinking about how horrible all of that is and how none of that is successful or means success. And I just really, really want to ask you, what do you think about that person? Like when you look back and you think of that person and who you were and that experience in your life, what goes through your mind?
I want to give her a big hug.
Aww.
I just want to give her a big hug, and I want to tell her that I forgive her. I want to tell her that it will be better, that it'll be different. The weekend of Landmark, I got so much value, and I called my father for the first time in 5 years. And I went to my psychiatrist and I asked, is there any physical repercussion of me no longer taking this medication? And he said, what do you mean? And I said, I hear that if you go off of these things, sometimes the worry is if it's too fast, you can have seizures. And he said, no, you don't take a high enough dose. And I go, great, because I'm never taking this again. And I haven't. I haven't taken a single Xanax. I haven't, and don't get me wrong. Like, there have been stressful things, because part of what I learned is that, just pushing your feelings down isn't a solution to anything. All feelings are for feeling. And now when I'm uncomfortable, I lean into it and I examine it, and I, let myself feel all of it. I can't remember the last time I had a drink. And one of the best things that I can use as an analogy to describe what that process was like is that, like, I had this hugely tangled up ball of yarn with like all sorts of knots and things in it, and that this was the start of the process to pull apart those yarns. And I think after about a year of pulling, I had to tell my second business partner that I didn't want to be part of the business anymore. That was really hard and painful. I had to let all of our staff know. That was painful. I had to tell my friends. That was really, really difficult to do. And I ended up having to declare bankruptcy. I mean, there was no feasible way for me to continue the path I was on. And even though that was something that I felt was the ultimate failure, I realized it didn't have to mean that at all. It could be a fresh start. And once that happened, and I had like pulled apart all of these pieces of yarn, I could start to like wrap it around my hand and form like an orderly ball of yarn that I could use to knit whatever future I wanted to.
Oh my God, what a metaphor. I love that.
You're like so good at, metaphors and explaining things.
And I just remember you saying to me literally just like 2 weeks ago that your biggest, like the most painful part, and maybe, I don't know, maybe there's a few, but I remember you saying it was that you felt like you were letting people down.
Yeah. I felt like I was letting all the people down who believed in me. It's not about money or what I said that I was going to do. It's like, I'm a woman of my word. If I say that I'm going to create a successful business, I plan to follow through on that, and the fact that I had changed my mind was sort of the only thing that got me through that, because I, to this day, feel that if I make a commitment to something, that I plan to see it through. It's just that was no longer part of what I felt like my journey should be in life.
Hey, Taris, did you have a question?
Yeah, so in the beginning, when we started this, there was a lot of structure and talk about your parents and, why you went down the path that you went down, because your parents molded something or they put something in your head. And, when you keep on talking about, or you kept on talking about the failure and how you felt like you weren't succeeding, on a couple of occasions, you mentioned everybody else except for telling your parents.
Okay.
How did that go? And was that like...
Oh, well, this is a fun story. I haven't talked to my dad in quite some time. And when you graduate from these steps of this program, you can invite people in your life to come and join you and see what the whole thing is all about. So my dad flew to New York for like 36 hours to come to the second part graduation for me. And so he came and saw my apartment for the first time. He was there to basically see this journey come to a conclusion and then come visit me at the salon so that he could see it. And at this point, I was still trying to make it work. And
was this after the 5-year period that you didn't speak with him?
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I was still trying to make the salon work. I still hadn't gotten to a point where I could accept the fact that this was no longer what I wanted to do. Because these revelations, they don't come overnight. They don't they don't come in the timeline that you think that they should. They come exactly when they come, no sooner, no later. And so I was still trying to figure out what I was going to do. And so I take my father to the salon, and I just want him to be proud of me. And we step into the salon, and all of my employees are there, and my business partner's there, and they're so excited to meet him. And then in walks this man and serves me an eviction notice. My
Wow.
father.
What? Oh my God!
That's not a joke.
All moments.
Dying. That was so meant to be. That was not a coincidence.
I
Holy
agree with you.
crap.
And my whole body just felt like it was on fire. I was like, danger, 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 get out, get out, get out. It was like a fight or flight situation.
Like in front of your employees and in front of your dad and in front of everybody?
In front of everyone.
Oh my God.
So my dad takes me to the back room of the salon, and he's like, what's going on? What? And I had to explain it to him. And I had to tell him, what had been going on. I think it had been like 3 or 4 months since I'd paid the rent on the salon. And so I was trying to figure out through all of this, like how I was going to make that right and how I was going to be able to continue owning this business. And like, he didn't really know what to say. What can you say to that? Like, I thought he was going to start reaming me out, to be honest with you. I thought he was just going to be like, how could you be so, irresponsible? How could you do this? How could you do that? And he wasn't that way at all. I think that one of the things that I really learned from this experience is that like people rarely react the way that you project that they're going to react.
Yeah.
Like when I told people that I was walking away from the business finally, I thought everybody was going to look at me with pity or like ask a bunch of really uncomfortable questions, and most people just, okay, if that's what you want to do, then that's what you do.
Yeah, the pressure we put on ourselves is sometimes just doesn't make any sense at all.
No, and I wasn't at all realistic about even what my parents' expectations were of me. Like in the end, they just want me to be happy. There's nothing there is no one way to do that.
You know what? It just comes full circle. It almost feels like this whole journey of yours just came full circle, because it's like you were talking about your childhood, your parents had all these expectations, you put pressure on yourself, and then here's this little story you're sharing with us where you thought your dad was going to be like, and he was like, no, I just want you to be happy.
Yeah.
And we should want that for ourselves,
And speaking of happy, I think that Zsuzsi has never been more successful in her life because she's never been this happy. I think that's a great place to wrap, actually, even though all of us are like, part three.
We can also ask people to encourage them to ask questions if they have.
Yes, absolutely. I think that all of our viewers are going to benefit from these videos so much. I feel so emotional right now. I can't wait to post these. Yes, and if anyone watching has questions for Zsuzsi or any of us, any topic requests, any questions about the videos, any questions about other videos, anything, feel free to comment below. And just thank you so much for listening. Zsuzsi, thank you so much for sharing your journey with us today. We are all so moved.
Huge
It
thanks
just
for
really,
sharing
and doesn't it make you all like really it just reaffirms what success means, and just, it doesn't mean anything that society puts it out there to mean. It's like, no, not totally opposite. So, all right. Thank you so much again, Zsuzsi. And thank you so much for watching. Everyone be safe, and thanks. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.